Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jayam Vishnupad Paramahansa Puri Rajakacharya Astotar Sati Shri Srimad A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai Anantakoti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shamakund Radha Kund Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai Shri Navadvip Mayapur Dham Ki Jai Ganga Mayi Ki Jai Jamuna Mayi Ki Jai Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Tulsi Devi Ki Jai Samaveta Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. Gaur Premanande, Hari Hari Bol. Hare Krishna, and welcome to Srimad Bhagavatam with His Holiness Jayadvaita Swami. It is Friday, December 27th, 2024 in New York. And today we're starting with Srimad Bhagavatam, 4th Canto, 8th chapter, text number 61. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narada Muni here is continuing his instruction to Dhruva Maharaj. Viraktas Chandriya Rato Bhakti Yogena Bhuyasa Tang Nirantara Bhavena Bhajitadha Vimuktaye. If one is very serious about liberation, he must stick to the process of transcendental loving service, engaging 24 hours a day in the highest stage of ecstasy, and he must certainly be aloof from all activities of sense gratification. Purport: there are different stages of perfection according to different persons' objectives. Generally, people are karmis, for they engage in activities of sense gratification. Above the karmis are the jnanis, who are trying to become liberated from material entanglement. Yogis are still more advanced because they meditate on the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And above all these are the devotees, who simply engage in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. They are situated seriously on the topmost platform of ecstasy. Here, Dhruva Maharaj is advised that if he has no desire for sense gratification, then he should directly engage himself in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. The path of apavarga, or liberation, begins from the stage called moksha. In this verse, the word vimuktaye, for liberation, is especially mentioned. If one wants to be happy within this material world, he may aspire to go to the different material planetary systems, where there is a higher standard of sense gratification. But real moksha, or liberation, is performed without any such desire. This is explained in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu by the term anyabhilashita shunyam, without desire for material sense gratification. For persons who are still inclined to enjoy material life in different stages or on different planets, the stage of liberation in bhakti yoga is not recommended. Only persons who are completely free from the contamination of sense gratification can execute bhakti yoga, or the process of devotional service, very purely. The activities on the path of apavarga up to the stages of dharma, artha, and kama are meant for sense gratification. But when one comes to the stage of moksha, the impersonalist liberation, the practitioner wants to merge into the existence of the Supreme, but that is also sense gratification. When one goes above the stage of liberation, however, he at once becomes one of the associates of the Lord to render transcendental loving service. That is technically called vimukti. For this specific vimukti liberation, Narada Muni recommends that one directly engage himself in devotional service. Om Jnana Timirantasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripasindhubhya Evacha Patitanang Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vashadi Gaur Bhaktavrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. I'm very much looking forward to hearing Maharaj's comments on this verse. There are just a few things that occurred to me in the course of reading this, that Prabhupada talks about the bhakti yogis being situated seriously on the topmost platform of ecstasy. Before that, he delineates the other levels of transcendentalists, or not even transcendentalists, of people who want happiness in life, um, the karmis, the jnanis, the yogis. And but here he says about the devotees that they are situated seriously on the topmost platform of ecstasy. He also says that they simply engage in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. It calls to mind that verse, Bhukti Mukti Siddhi Kami Sakale Ashanta, that if you want anything else but Krishna Bhakti, chances are you're not going to be very peaceful. But Ata Eva Shanta, peaceful is the word that applies to the devotees who are simply engaged and situated seriously. I was listening to a class earlier today where Ravindra Suraprabhu was talking about the difference between sense gratification and cultivating sense gratification. Because here it's in the verse, it says that he must be, he meaning the transcendentalist, somebody who's serious about liberation, must be aloof from all activities of sense gratification. And Prabhupada once said that sense gratification is like salt. You can't have too little and you can't have too much, but you need some just to stay alive. So that's the recommended quota that we get of sense gratification, just enough to keep going. But the danger is with the cultivation of sense gratification is that once you get this thing happening that's listed in the Sanskrit here, Indriya Ratau, in the matter of sense gratification. So Indriya means the senses, and Ratau means attachment, or yeah, literally attachment. Once the senses are allowed to come into contact with their objects and get that pleasure that comes from the contact, the tendency is to want to really hold on to that and want more and more. But a transcendentalist accepts just as much as he needs to stay alive, to keep going in his life. The devotee actually aspires for less and less sense gratification, because it's the sense gratification and self-realization, they're inversely proportional. Sense gratification goes up, your self-realization will go down, and vice versa. A lot of people would like to see both sides of the scale go up and up, but that's cheating. And we're not advised to cheat here. Another thing Prabhupada says here in the purport is the path of apavarga, or liberation, begins from the stage called moksha. That called to mind like the base camp of Everest. If you're a serious mountain climber, the first place you need to get is base camp. And then from there, there's an advanced path up to the summit. And so in the process of devotional service, moksha is the like the base camp for attaining actual devotion to the Lord. Moksha is the beginning. But then he says, also very interestingly, he says, for persons who are still inclined to enjoy material life in different stages or on different planets, the stage of liberation in bhakti yoga is not recommended. And in other places, of course, we hear that akama sarva kamava moksha kama udharadi tivrena bhakti yogena yajeta purusham param, that no matter what you want, bhakti yoga is recommended. But because everything is subsidiary to that bhakti yoga, you'll achieve everything that you want. But here he says that if you are still inclined to enjoy material life, that stage of liberation that you get from bhakti yoga is not recommended, because you'll bypass all those things that you think you want. Here at the very end, the word vimuktaye is pointed out. Prabhupada points it out. It's the last thing that Narad Muni says here. So that is technically called vimukti, and the prefix v is like the all-purpose intensifier in Sanskrit. So there's mukti and vimukti. And that this sort of vimukti is what's said here. One directly engages himself in devotional service. So just like Mahat Seva Dvaram, Ahur Vimuktes. It depends on the company you keep, your success in attaining love of God. Yes. So, Hare Krishna. Maharaj, we'd love to hear from you if you have some things to say on this verse.
Thank you, Kendra Prabhu. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Shaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatadesha Tadane Panchako Patarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bhyevacha Tita Nam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. In one sense, the verse is quite simple, quite usual in terms of what we hear, but it assumes a higher imperative when we see Nirantara Bhavena, and see that Prabhupada translates it as ecstasy, the highest stage of ecstasy, and says one must serve in the highest stage of ecstasy, 24 hours, if one is serious. The Bhuyasa, with great seriousness, Virakta cha indriya vrato, one should be completely detached from sense gratification. Bhakti yogena, by devotional service. Bhuyasa, serious devotional service, not just time-serving devotional service, routine devotional service, cultural affinity devotional service, but as we hear elsewhere, tivrena bhakti yogena, intense devotional service, or nirantara bhavena bhajeta. One must worship Tam, the Supreme, constantly, 24 hours a day, bhavena, with transcendental ecstasy on the highest stage. Then adha vimukti, for liberation of the highest sort. So, in one sense, we might feel a little disappointed. I don't know if I can do this, serve 24 hours a day in ecstasy, just if I can be decent and not get in too much trouble during the day, and at the end have rendered a little practical service, we think, yes, I did something. But here Prabhupada is asking for more intense service, or very serious service, in ecstasy. And ecstasy is the highest stage, transcendental loving service, not just transcendental service, but loving service on the topmost platform of ecstasy. So this, of course, it focuses us on what we're trying to accomplish here. We're not just trying to be religious people or complete a certain requirements on the sadhana check sheet, but our goal is to become absorbed in devotional service in ecstasy. So we may think that we have a long way to go, and we may be right, but this is our goal. And then it's mentioned that when one goes above as Kendra Prabhu mentioned, there's liberation, mukti, and then vimukti, special mukti, which Prabhupada makes clear that when we go above mukti to vimukti, we become associates of the Lord to render transcendental loving service. Vishwanath says, with bhava such as dasya. So that means ecstatic attachment to the Lord or ecstatic devotion to the Lord in a particular way, a particular mood, maybe as a servant or it may be in any relationship. But by this, one hopes to achieve special liberation, being an associate of the Lord with prema. So this is the standard of pure devotional service. Anya vilashita shunyam. Everything else zero. We take that as a general instruction, no gyan, no karma, no sense gratification or desires for impersonal liberation. But it also means to have no other business but to serve Krishna, to serve Krishna. So we can only aspire for that perfection, vimukti. Hare Krishna.
Ananta Seish Prabhu writes, is that relationship between sense gratification and self-realization true 100% of the time?
Maybe a Kendra Prabhu can field that one.
That point is most frequently raised, from what I've heard, in relation to Prabhupada saying that life is meant for self-realization and not sense gratification. So my understanding is that yes, that is the case. As much as we'd like to see both sides of the scale go up and up. Any other comments or questions here? Hare Krishna.
Well,
yes. Saraswati Mata, please go ahead.
And pranams Parampuja Maharaj and all the Vaishnavas. In the purport, it said Dhruva Maharaj is advised that if he has no desire for sense gratification, then he should directly engage himself in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. Of course, we know he does have material desires, and later on in the purport, it is said that for persons who are still inclined to enjoy material life in different stages or on different planets, the stage of liberation in Bhakti Yoga is not recommended. Only persons who are completely free from the contaminations of sense gratification can execute Bhakti Yoga. But so it sort of appears contradictory here because Dhruv Maharaj is advised to engage in devotional service even if he does have material desires. And even in Bhagavad Gita, we know whether you have material desires or, kama, dvesha, bhayat, snehat, whether in fear or want of something, you should still approach Krishna. So anyone can engage in Bhakti Yoga, even if they do have material desires. Is that correct? Hare Krishna.
Yes, it's certainly correct. Kama, sarva kama va. Whatever we want. Tivrena bhakti yogena yajeta purusham param. We should engage in the service of Krishna. And Dhruva is the most frequently offered example. He wanted something, but still he sought to achieve that desire by engaging in the service of Krishna. This is one of those places where I think we sometimes just scratch our head and say, we know what Prabhupada was getting at, because if we read it literally, I think we're going to get confused. He's advised that if he has no desire for sense gratification, he should directly engage in the loving service of the Lord. But as you say, we know that he has a desire for sense gratification, and when we read the verse, we don't see that explicit advice that, well, if you have no desire. So when I come to such things, I just think, well, we know what Prabhupada is teaching in terms of, what would you say, what the message is. And if there's something that seems to go against that message, we take the overriding point. Perhaps it's something editorial, perhaps it's something grammatical, or perhaps it's something quoted from two different places. That also often happens. But I wouldn't be derailed and say, oh my God, everything is contradictory here. I would just go with it and say, all right, there may be some thought there that Prabhupada had that I didn't get. But the thrust of his arguments is throughout, especially when you read the chapters and when you read the whole pastime, you really can't go wrong. You can't think that, well, Narada Muni was speaking to this person who had no material desires. We know that that's not the case. So I think we have to look at the large, when we run up against something like this where it seems contradictory, we look to the larger context.
Nari Gupta Prabhu writes, Hare Krishna Maharaj, I don't understand how we can love if we don't love. There's no such thing as artificial love. You either have it or don't. If you don't, whatever you are doing isn't loving. So how do we love Krishna when we don't? I hope this doesn't sound too crazy.
Well, it's not artificial because Nitya Siddha Krishna Prema Saju Kabunai. We do have love, but it's covered. In the material world, we may have love or we may not have love, depending on circumstances and what attracts our senses at the moment. But Nitya Siddha Krishna Prema, this love for Krishna is inherent within every living being. So we have love, but it's covered. Just like a child has the ability to walk, but he's not walking yet. Something has to happen, and then he has to grow up a little bit. He needs a little help. Then he'll walk. It's not something artificial. It's there, but it has to be brought out. So the love for Krishna is there. It's not we don't love. It's there, but it has to be brought out. Just like the desire to eat, it's there, but when a person's diseased, then it goes away. I don't want to eat anything. But when he's brought to his healthy condition, then he looks forward to eating. So in our diseased condition, no love. But when we come to our healthy position, then the love is automatic, natural. Hope that helps.
Jai, thank you very much. He says, thank you. That's very encouraging. Indeed. So now we've reached the end for the moment of Narada Muni's instructions to Dhruva, and now we get the story starts to move along a little further. I was going to see whether Saraswati Mata would like to read the next few verses until we get a purport there.
Text 62. Iti yuktastam parikramya pranamya cha nraparabhakaha yayu madhuvanam punyam harishcharana charitam. Translation: When Dhruv Maharaj, the son of the king, was thus advised by the great sage Narada, he circumambulated Narada, his spiritual master, and offered him respectful obeisances. Then he started for Madhuvan, which is always imprinted with the lotus footprints of Lord Krishna, and which is therefore especially auspicious. Should I continue?
Well, I'd like to get Vishwanath's commentary there because it's sweet.
I'll read it if you like, Maharaj. I'll read
Yes.
the verse also. Thus being taught, Dhruva, my microphone is on, I hope.
You're good.
Okay. Thus being taught, Dhruva circumambulated Narada and offered respects. He then went to pure Madhuvan, marked with the footprints of Krishna. And his commentary, because Krishna appears in every day of Brahma, Madhuvan is marked with his footprints from the previous day. In the day of Brahma, Krishna appeared after Dhruva. Yes, Mata, if you like, please go ahead with 63 and 64 until we get to the purport.
तपोवनं गति तस्मिन् प्रविष्टो नित्यपुरं मुनि अर्हितारोहणको राजना सुहक्षण्या उवाच तं. Translation: After Dhruva entered Madhuvan forest to execute devotional service, the great sage Narada thought it wise to go to the king to see how he was faring within the palace. When Narada Muni approached, the king received him properly, offering him due obeisances. After being seated comfortably, Narada began to speak. Narada uvacha rajan kim dhyayashe dirgaham mukena parishushyata kim va narishyati kamo dharmo vartane samyatah. Translation: The great sage Narada inquired, "My dear king, your face appears to be withering up, and you look like you have been thinking of something for a very long time. Why is that? Have you been hampered in following your path of religious rites, economic development, and sense gratification?" Purport: The four stages of advancement of human civilization are religiosity, economic development, sense gratification, and for some, the stage of liberation. Narada Muni did not inquire from the king about his liberation, but only regarding the state management, which is meant for advancement of the three principles religiosity, economic development, and sense gratification. Since those who engage in such activities are not interested in liberation, Narada did not inquire from the king about this. Liberation is meant for persons who have lost all interest in religious, ritualistic ceremonies, economic development, and sense gratification. Om Gyanan Timirindasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshuran Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. I find it really fascinating that Narada Muni, he goes to anyone and everyone if he knows that there is a chance that they can somehow or another be prompted to advance in Krishna consciousness. I'm thinking of the other two kings, Chitraketu, who was also forlorn, having lost his son, and he went to offer him not only consolation, but knowledge in bhakti. And even King Prachina Bariya, I recall he even went to him to give him knowledge and solace. Here it's quite clear that this King Utpanan, he was not interested in liberation. He has karma adhikari, which the four purusharthas, dharma, kam, artha, moksha, he's not really even interested in the moksha. So Narada Muni definitely didn't go to give him knowledge specifically to attain liberation. And as it was mentioned in the previous verse, unless one has been disgusted with any material sense gratification, to come to the stage of wanting to engage in bhakti yoga is not always going to be successful. It's sort of that Brahma Bhuta, Prashanatma platform. So Narad Muni has gone to try and still offer consolation to the king and tell him more about how Dhruva Maharaja is going to come back and increase the fame and fortune of that particular dynasty. Hare Krishna.
Jai, thank you so much, Mataji. Maharaj, would you care to comment here?
I'm reminded, I was hearing something this morning, Prabhupada was talking about, I believe it was the messenger sent by Rukmini, the Brahmin messenger sent by Rukmini to Krishna to invite him to kidnap her. And Krishna inquired, is your mind peaceful? And Prabhupada comments that for a Brahmin, it's necessary to be peaceful if he wants to execute his prescribed duties in Brahminical life, and his mind should be peaceful. And so Prabhupada explained that when we address someone, then we address him in terms of his occupation. So we ask a saintly person, how is your bhajan, your devotional service? Is your performance of sacrifices going on nicely? Is your mind peaceful? And so on. We don't ask the Brahmin, how's your business going? That's a question for the Vaishya. Is your business going on nicely? Or are your cows happy and well fed? Because that's the Vaishya's business. We ask the Kshatriya whether the citizens are happy, whether in his kingdom people are following their prescribed duties. So in that way, we ask everyone according to their position. So here, there was no need to ask the king, how's your project going for liberation? Because he didn't have that project going on. He might be involved in religious activities, certainly in economic development and sense gratification. But it wasn't expected that the king would be involved in a liberation, to say nothing of vimukti, special liberation. Also, the Prabhupada said face is the index of mind. So he could see that the king was despondent. His face is drying up. Something is deeply wrong. So just by the face, one can tell. I once asked Prabhupada a question, that if the spiritual master is not, physically present at our location, how does he know what we're doing in devotional service? And the question was essentially, how do we get our brownie points? How do we get credit for our devotional activities if the spiritual master isn't on the scene to tell? How does he know? And Prabhupada sort of took the question in a different direction. He said, everyone can tell. Face is the index of mind, so everyone can see how you're doing in devotional service just by seeing the face. Face is the index of mind.
One thing occurred to me is Narada's approach to people is, as we see here with his approach to King Uttanapad, he doesn't simply show up and say, I know everything that's going on, and this is what's going on, and this is your problem, and this is why you're... He starts asking him questions as if he doesn't know, very innocently.
Also, he's concerned with the king's welfare, with his well-being. He doesn't go just to... It's not asking for a contribution or what have you. Has no need to go, except that he's going for the king's welfare.
Any other comments or questions before we move on here? Ross Prabhu, is there anything in the chat that I might have missed? I don't think so.
No, nothing.
No. Well, then, would you like to read our next verse? 65.
Yes. Rajavacha Sutome Baliko Brahman Shrina Karunatmana Nirvasita Panchavarsa Saha Matra Mahan Kavi. Translation. The king replied, O best of the Brahmanas, I am very much addicted to my wife, and I am so fallen that I have abandoned all merciful behavior, even to my son, who is only 5 years old. I have banished him and his mother, even though he is a great soul and a great devotee. Purport. In this verse, there are some specific words which are to be understood very carefully. The king said that since he was very much addicted to his wife, he had lost all his mercy. That is the result of becoming too affectionate toward women. The king had 2 wives. The first wife was Suniti, and the second was Suruchi. He was too attached to the second wife, however, so he could not behave well with Dhruva Maharaj. That was the cause of Dhruva's leaving home to perform austerities. Although as a father the king was affectionate toward his son, he minimized his affection for Dhruva Maharaj because he was too much addicted to the second wife. Now he was repenting that both Dhruva Maharaj and his mother, Suniti, were practically banished. Dhruva Maharaj went to the forest, and since his mother was being neglected by the king, she was therefore almost banished also. The king repented, having banished his boy, for Dhruva was only 5 years old, and a father should not banish his wife and children or neglect their maintenance. Repentant over his neglect of both Suniti and her son, he was morose, and his face appeared withered. According to Manu Smriti, one should never desert his wife and children. In a case where the wife and children are disobedient and do not follow the principles of home life, they are sometimes given up. But in the case of Dhruva Maharaj, this was not applicable because Dhruva was very mannerly and obedient. Moreover, he was a great devotee. Such a person is never to be neglected. Yet the king was obliged to banish him. Now he was very sorry.
Some thoughts to share, Prabhu? Some comments, thoughts, questions, observations?
Yep. Such a top of Maharaj, maybe.
Well, you- Strinena really jumps out at us. King is feeling intense moroseness, and especially Strinena, because I'm too attached to my wife. Therefore, akaruna atmana, become hard-hearted, merciless. Akaruna means without mercy. Why? For this woman. For this woman. I know I'm affectionate to both sons. I have natural affection as a father. But because of attachment to this woman, I've acted in such a hard-hearted way. So this is notable. Strinena. What is that? In the 3rd canto, Lord Kapila mentions that a person who becomes like a a dancing dog in the hands of a woman loses all good qualities. Let's see. Hold on, we'll find that. previous verse. Yeah. If one, here in the third canto, that if one associates with materialistic people, then he becomes devoid of all good qualities: truthfulness, cleanliness, mercy, gravity, spiritual intelligence, shyness, austerity, fame, forgiveness, control of the mind, control of the senses, good fortune, all such opportunities. And therefore one shouldn't associate with a fool. Mudheshu, what is that? Ashanteshu mudheshu, a coarse fool. Kandidatmas sadhushu, a wicked person, a sadhu, not at all a sadhu. Kandidatman, devoid of self-realization. One shouldn't associate with them, and especially when they're like dancing dogs in the hands of a woman. Yoshit Krita Mrigeshucha, pitiful dancing dog in the hands of a woman. So that warning is there, that to please a woman, one can become cruel, heartless, mean, foolish. So one should be very careful. Then, therefore, especially no illicit sex. One becomes controlled by a prostitute, by the lowest of women becomes controlled by a prostitute. She raises her eyebrows and says, "Wouldn't it be nice?" And he becomes foolish and just wants to satisfy her and keep the friendship, keep the relationship. And meanwhile, he's becoming more and more degraded, more and more foolish. Of course, that's illicit sex, but even in legal sex, one should be self-controlled. Otherwise, he becomes, again, passion's slave. He becomes a dancing dog in the hands of a woman. He'll do things against his own self-interest, against religious principles, against the welfare of others. Simply, the woman will be happy. In literature, we have Macbeth. To satisfy his wife, he kills the king, and everything goes from there. But these things go on. That just to, who was it? He gave the prostitute John the Baptist's head on a plate. So these things are going on in real life. In real life, these things go on. The woman wants something, and yes, dear, if that'll make you happy. So the king is lamenting, Strineshu. Yes, is that right? Strinena. Too addicted to the wife. One has to be, therefore, brahmachari training, so that one becomes master of the senses. And even in household life, he doesn't become a dancing dog. He doesn't become, what would you say? Just a toy. And Grihamedhi, Prabhupada explained one time that you've seen perhaps in the field, they'll have a bull tied to a pole, and the bull is walking in a circle and threshing grain. That's his engagement. And Prabhupada said the Grihamedhi is a person like that. The pole is sex enjoyment. And he's tied to that sex enjoyment. And so he goes around and around working and perhaps committing sinful activities for the sake of sex enjoyment. So therefore, brahmachari training, so that even in householder life, he doesn't become just a sex addict, a person who is finally only has that to look forward to, and will do whatever he needs to do as long as that sex enjoyment is there. And then becomes merciless, foolish, and so on. Hare Krishna. Who do we have? Mark Antony, that's also there. Yeah, just abandoned his duties because he couldn't give up his lust for Cleopatra. So many examples. Hare Krishna.
Comments in the chat from Saraswati Mataji. There are parallels with King Dasarath,
Yes.
who was also more attached to Kaikeyi, which ultimately resulted in the banishment of Lord Ramachandra. It caused so much suffering too, and the king died in separation. Here, King Uttanapad knows his son is a great devotee, which makes his suffering that much more unbearable, and he does not know how to mitigate this pain. He is fortunate that Narad Muni is there to offer counsel.
Yes.
Purna Madhavi Mataji writes, Hare Krishna Maharaj, can we take this as the dependence and surrender for Lord's plan on King's part, that King Uttanapad, although so much concerned for his son, doesn't send anyone to search out for him in the forest, like ordinarily a parent would have done, thinking of his 5-year-old in the midst of the forest? Or the king is still fearful to displease his wife?
Interesting question. I don't see comments here about it, but it's an interesting question. Why didn't they send a search party? Why didn't they send, half the army to search for Dhruva? I don't know the answer to that question.
Hare Krishna. I can't claim to know the answers to that question, but I was thinking also along with the Strainena, that he's being too addicted to his wife. The sex is obviously the prototype of all pleasure in the material world, but we also are, those who are on the path of bhakti vow to avoid other attachments to addictive behaviors, because for this very reason, that they cloud one's consciousness. One is not able to see reality as it is, as the king is lamenting he can't do here.
Then again, we have in third canto, there's nothing that matches up to this attachment, the attachment to woman. But I think that's in the same set of verses, if I'm not wrong. Yeah, it's the next verse, in fact, after Yoshit Kriti Mageshucha. Natatasya Pavain Moho Bandaschanya Prasangataha Yoshit Sangad Yatapam So Yatatat Sangi Sangata. There's nothing, the infatuation and bondage, natata moha, infatuation, illusion, and bandha, attachment or bondage, that comes from anything else. There's nothing like what you get from Yoshit Sangha, from attachment to women, or Tat Sangi Sangata, from fellowship or association with those who are attached to women. So this attachment to women is toxic, and attachment to those associated with women for sense enjoyment is also toxic. There are many reasons for our conditional life in the material world, but the topmost of all such causes is the association of women, as confirmed in the following stanzas. Let's see. In Kali Yuga, association with women is very strong. In every step of life, there's association with women. If a person goes to purchase something, the advertisements are full of pictures of women. The physiological attraction for women is very great, and therefore people are very slack in spiritual understanding. So that as you said about the scale, the attachment for women is very strong, and therefore interest in spiritual understanding is slack. The Vedic civilization, being based on spiritual understanding, arranges association with women very cautiously. Out of the 4 social divisions, the members of the first order, namely brahmacharya, the third order, vanaprastha, and the fourth order, sannyas, are strictly prohibited from female association. Only in one order, the householder, is there license to mix with women under restricted conditions. In other words, attraction for women, for woman's association, is the cause of the material conditional life. And anyone interested in being freed from this conditional life must detach himself from the association of women. Hare Krishna.
We have a couple more comments we should probably get to.
Praveen Krishna Prabhu writes, is it always the case that being attached to wife loses all mercy? Can there be cases where the husband being attached to devotee wife becomes more merciful?
Yes, that's possible.
Saraswati Masterji writes, Queen Suniti had given permission for Dhruva to go, and her permission trumps all. So presumably the king would have learned of this and not taken further action to undermine her.
Don't know that that's the explanation.
Thank you for that. And if you have a couple minutes before you have to go, Ras Prabhu, could you lead us in our closing kirtan? Hare Krishna.
Yes. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Puri Rajakacharya Ashtotar Sata Shri Srimad A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai Namacharya Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhakti Vrinda Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shyama Kund Radha Kund Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai Navadvip Dham Ki Jai Ganga Mayi Ki Jai Jamuna Mayi Ki Jai Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Tulsi Devi Ki Jai Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. Gaura Premanande, Hari Hari Bo. Thank you, Ras Prabhu, for the kirtan. And thank you, everyone, for your participation, questions, comments, and listening, and just for giving us your association. Especially thank you, Maharaj. Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. His Holiness Jayadvaita Swami Maharaj Ki Jai.
Namaveta Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. Gaura Premanande, Hari Hari Bol.
Hari Hari Bo.
The one note, perhaps, I received a note from Jaiguru Sundar Prabhu, who many of you know, that Komodaki is in a critical condition with a cervical cancer, which is metastasized. So just as he asked for our blessings so that she can leave this world thinking of Krishna. So all of her well-wishers here can offer their blessings and prayers. Very wonderful devotee, Komodaki. All right, and on that sober note, we'll look forward to seeing you again on Monday.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Bol.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Shama. Thank you, Krishna Kontiya. Thank you to all.
Yes.
Hare Krishna.